Now, and welcome everybody to this LPPD webinar, but preparing us for the big event in Ann Arbor, where we will come back a bit about that, but we will go to Menlo Innovation and see the real thing, and we will listen to Dante's wisdom as well. So, but first we start with the chief storyteller, Rich Sheridan. Please take the stage.
Awesome. Let's see. You need to enable screen sharing for me.
Yeah. Totally correct. So that is done.
All right, there we go. Well, great to be with you all. I'm going to essentially offer up a hypothesis today that I would like you to test with me going forward. And that is the hypothesis that words like joy and love actually have a place in the context of work, in the context of our businesses. And in fact, they actually make a direct contribution to the bottom line of a company, to the results that company produces. I love this quote from psychologist Rollo May. It's probably about 100-year-old quote now, that the opposite of courage is not cowardice, but conformity. And I'm probably going to take you on a slightly non-conforming journey, and I hope to encourage you to join me. And I'm guessing the type of people that show up at webinars like this are absolutely themselves either considering or are already on a non-conforming journey. Just to give you a little bit of personal history so you know where I'm coming from. I'm a computer guy. I'm a software guy. I touched a computer for the first time in 1971, typed in a 2-line program. It clacked out on a roll of paper because that's the way they used to work in those days. And it said, "Hi, Rich," because that's what I told it to do. And I knew what I wanted to do the rest of my days. I wanted to write software for a living. And I'm still in the same business today. What are we at? 52 years later. So I guess I chose well. By 1973, I had won an international programming contest for what would now be termed fantasy baseball. I'm sure my life is littered with lost opportunities like this, but I just wanted to play baseball on the computer between my favorite Major League Baseball teams with my friends in the cold Michigan winter months where I grew up. And that international programming contest win actually landed me my first job as a programmer before I could even drive a car. And I stayed working at that place through high school graduation, but eventually went to the University of Michigan, got a couple of degrees in computer science, computer engineering here in Ann Arbor, and launched a career that by all external measures looked perfect. I went from programmer in 1982 to vice president of R&D in 1997. Every year, raises, promotions, stock options, greater title, greater authority, bigger team, bigger office, all the things that go along with worldly success I had. And yet there was a different and, quite frankly, far more important line that looked like this. My heart was breaking for a career that I thought would carry me for a lifetime. So here I was enjoying everything that made my parents proud, my wife happy that she made the right decision marrying a guy that could provide for our family. And yet by my mid-30s, I literally wanted out of the industry entirely. So what was going on? What was so different that was causing this disparity? Well, those of you who know the software industry at all probably know we often operate in chaos. Chaos in software is really easy to understand. It's bugs galore. It's phones ringing constantly all day long with problems that customers are calling with. There are missed deadlines, blown budgets, poor quality. There is missed expectations. Users don't know how to use things. And so I would often come home after very long days. My wife would look at tired me and she'd say, "Honey, you look really tired. Did you get a lot done today?" And I realized, no, I got nothing done today. And that is very frustrating. It's very debilitating. It's very demoralizing. I think a group that looks at lean process and product development is one that believes, like I did, there was a better way of doing things than was customary. And I was in this mode of saying, I either got to get out or I got to figure out how to change it. And the trouble with chaos in any industry is it typically leads to negative events. One I write about in my first book was fortunately not my event, but a tired programmer at Knight Capital Group made a simple server update error and watched in horror as that New York Stock Exchange trading platform traded $7 billion worth of securities it wasn't supposed to, costing Knight Capital Group $400 million in losses in 45 minutes. Now, I'm sure wherever you work, that would be considered a negative event, losing $400 million in 45 minutes. It eventually put Knight Capital Group out of business. And so when there are negative events, there's typically a corporate response. In the software industry, it often looks like a 3-ring binder filled with stage gates, templated documents, approval processes, standing committees, signature authority, all that kind of stuff. We love our acronyms in the software industry, so we'll call it our software development lifecycle process, the SDLC for short. We usually have to put a police force in charge of minding the documents, the project management office. And the trouble then is you go from chaos to full-blown bureaucracy. You go from the land of never getting anything done to, quite frankly, the land of never getting anything started. And this was my life, back and forth between chaos and bureaucracy. And by my mid-30s, I was tired of it. I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. I didn't feel like I was delivering anything of great value. And it wasn't like everything was going wrong, but there was just so much that I looked at. It felt inefficient. It felt ineffective. It felt like a waste of my time and my company's money. And so as I rose the management ranks, I started thinking a lot more about process. I started thinking there's got to be a better way. And I think my enlightenment led me to think, well, let's just create I forgot to mention that one part of my life was operating in chaos and bureaucracy simultaneously by hallway project management and shadow IT groups. So you'd placate the bureaucracy on one side while operating in chaos simultaneously on the other side. And again, that was a source of my frustration. But as I rose through those management ranks, I started to think, maybe there's a better way. Maybe we could lighten up the big documents for smaller projects. Maybe we don't have to go through all the bureaucracy. But in fact, that didn't work either. The meetings were never held, or if they were, people didn't actually participate. And so eventually, get rid of all this stuff. Get rid of the PMO, the process. Declare you're agile or you're lean, but those were just business buzzwords. It wasn't actually a change of behavior, which is what we know we need in order to accomplish something in a different way. Because if you just simply adopt the buzzword, it probably means you just prefer chaos over bureaucracy. So that was my life. That's what was going on down there in my heartbreaking moments. And I'll be honest, I was scared because this is what I knew how to do. This is what I had gone to college for. This was my career, my profession, and my paycheck. And I didn't know what I was going to do to escape this. But my eternal optimist kicked in, and I started reading books, but not books on technology. I started reading books on management organization. I started reading books on design thinking. I started reading books on what is a better way than is customary to organize the humans more effectively, which is, I think, again, what gathers all of you together in a group like this. And in 1999, I had what Franz Johansson calls a click moment, where suddenly all became clear. I'd read a book, I'd seen a video, and I met a guy. The guy was my co-founder, now co-founder, James Goebel. He came in as a consultant to me back then when I was VP of R&D for Interface Systems, a company that became the #1 public company in Michigan by 1999 based on stock growth. The video was on an industrial design firm called IDEO. You're probably familiar with both the firm and the video that Nightline put out on them. And the book was on an unusually named way to organize a software team that Kent Beck called extreme programming. Just a different way to organize the team. And those three things all happened within quick succession. And that click moment caused me to change everything about the way that public company was run. I was the VP of R&D, so I had a pretty sizable perch in the company, and I changed the entire public company and how it operated during those 2 years with the blessings of the CEO, Bob Nero. And in 2001, after 2 years of getting back to a word I now use more commonly, I probably didn't use it back then, but I got back to the joy of what got me into this profession in the first place. We were producing great results with great teamwork, great camaraderie, great energy, and not all the bureaucracy that had crept in. And then in 2001, all was lost. The internet bubble burst. The California parent that had purchased interface systems during this time had to shutter every remote office I had. And for the first time in my career, I was out of a job. And my wife looked at me with tears in her eyes and she said, "You're unemployed?" And I said, "No, honey, I'm an entrepreneur now." Because while I could lose everything in those 2 years, they could not take away what I had learned. And what I had learned is it is not about finding the perfect setting dial between chaos and bureaucracy. What I learned is we can, in fact, through good systems thinking and great processes, actually throw this picture away entirely and replace it with a different mental model for how to think about our organizations and how to organize our teams, humans, and processes. And so the metaphor I use now is that of a little airplane. If you think of the forces that work on an airplane, the ones that we're probably all familiar with, even if you don't have a pilot's license like me, there are certain forces that keep that plane aloft safely, successfully, and reliably. There's the force of lift that actually has to overcome the force of weight. There's the force of thrust that has to overcome the force of drag. So what's the analogy to a human organization? Well, I would declare one of the most squandered energy forces on the planet is the lift of human energy. We know this. The Gallup Group is measuring human organizations year in and year out. Tells us that 60 to 70% of people are disengaged at work, some of them actively disengaged, actually working counter purpose to the organization. We have to, as leaders, think about how do we increase and preserve the human energy of our organizations. The weight that holds us down, the weight of bureaucracy, meeting load. Often joke with large corporate audiences, if you really want to suck the human energy out of our organization, it's a simple 3-step process. Number 1, have lots of meetings. Number 2, do not make any decisions in those meetings. And number 3, if perchance by mistake you happen to make a decision, that's okay. Just don't act on it. And you will pull all of the human energy out of your organization. Then I have to remind those corporate organizations after I say those 3 things, that was sarcasm. Because they're all like, who are you talking to at our company? And so the thrust that pulls us forward is the thrust of a well-understood and well-communicated purpose. I'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. And the drag that holds us back is the drag of fear. Now, if we're going to get our human organization off the ground safely, successfully, and reliably, we have to think about what to do in these areas. For example, in the area of human energy, some of the things we focus our attention on is clarity over ambiguity. Giving people the ability to go to work and actually get meaningful things really done. Not just started, not multitasking, not let's get 5 things started, but nothing done, but actually give people a chance to get work done. Work that they can be proud of. The weight that holds us down, meeting loads, that slow or no decision making. What we focus on is taking action over taking a meeting. The purpose should be externally focused. We should think about 2 key questions for our organization that everyone in the company should be able to ask and answer. Who do we serve? And what would delight look like for them? These are important things to consider when we think about our company's purpose. And the drag that holds us back, fear is so common in most organizations, it must be considered normal to try and motivate people with fear. There must be classes taught at business schools that teach people how to lead with fear. Whether it's micromanaging, stupid annual performance review processes, just sighs inside of meetings or raised eyebrows that tell us the boss isn't happy with where we're going, whatever we're discussing. All of these things must be put in the proper balance. We must decrease the amount of fear in an organization. We won't get rid of all of it. That wouldn't even be healthy or normal. Decrease and lighten up the bureaucracy, make sure we're doing everything we can to lift the human energy, make sure everybody understands our purposes. And if we do this regularly and systematically, our little corporate aircraft will get off the ground reliably every single day. These are the things we focus on here at Menlo. Now, a beautiful confluence of vocabulary that I just love when this kind of model fits so well in the vocabulary of an organization is, if you think about the next time you're on a plane and that plane is rolling down the runway, we're hitting takeoff speed and the pilot makes a slight move, just pulls the yoke back a little bit, creates a new angle, what's called a new angle of attack. The name for that angle during takeoff is positive attitude. If we just add in a little bit of positive attitude to our organization, not a lot, we don't want to yank back on the stick, just throw in that little bit of positive attitude, we leap off the ground every single day. A little bit of historical reference. The Wright brothers achieved powered controlled manned flight, 1903. Defeated a much better, well-funded team in terms of the number of people and the amount of funding they had and their educational background. Samuel Pierpont Langley, operating out of Washington, D.C., was trying to beat the Wright brothers to this goal of first in flight. They failed. They quit. I find that kind of remarkable. There was so much more to discover. Why did Langley and his team quit? I think it goes to a version of purpose that's important. Langley and his team wanted the glory of being known as the first in flight. The Wright brothers wanted to fly. Big difference. There was so much more to discover. Now, in fact, shortly after this event, Orville Wright was interviewed, and he was asked, how far will you get with this? And he said, guys, don't get too excited. This is not as practical an invention as you think, because we will never be able to build an airplane that can carry more than 2 passengers. It's just not physically possible. So while it is an exciting moment in human history, it is not as big a practical invention as you can think, because of the amount of horsepower required, the drag on the aircraft, the amount of fuel needed, all that kind of stuff. Orville Wright was basically saying, this is kind of it. Now, how do I know this? Well, I read it in a book. I read it in a book about Orville Wright's life. I read that book on a 747 to London, 400 passengers flying at 500 miles an hour with 50,000 gallons of fuel at 35,000 feet. The first 747 flew in 1969, a scant 21 years after Orville Wright's passing. Almost in the context of his lifetime, this occurred. And the point of all of this is, as leaders, we can, in fact, do specific things to lift the human energy of our team. And if we do it in a systematic, thoughtful, process-oriented way, we can fly to heights and distances that were previously unimaginable. I feel this in my own personal history. We started Menlo back in 2001. This is a picture of Menlo from a few years ago. One big open room. Everybody working shoulder to shoulder, side by side, 2 people, 1 computer. We assign those pairs. We switch them every 5 working days. We had to invent new kinds of processes. We had to invent new kinds of practices. We have a whole set of people on our team that have an unusual title called high-tech anthropologist. Their job is to study the humans we intend to build software for. We have a big purpose in mind. We want to end human suffering in the world as it relates to technology. There's plenty of it out there. We'll never be able to end all of it, but we can do our part in the industry. But if somebody had asked me when we invented this thing 21 years ago, what did I hope to accomplish? Where did I think we could go? How far could we fly? I probably would have said something like 2. I probably would have said something like, if I can get a process down to the point where we could have 2 or fewer emergencies per day, I think we'd really be onto something. Because my life up to that point was just firefighting galore. I might as well have come to work in firefighting gear. If someone had pressed me and said, come on, Rich, set your sights higher than that. There's got to be a bigger goal than that. How about 2 emergencies a month or a quarter or a year? I'd say, come on, guys, this is software. You got to be kidding. There's no way. I'm happy to report after 22 years, two software emergencies in 22 years. I would have never believed that was possible. Probably like Orville Wright could have never believed a 747 was possible. But again, the delight of all of this, I think the reason you guys get together the way you do, and what you think about, what you talk about, what communities you build around yourselves is because you in fact believe better ways are customary. And if we find the right kind of systems and processes, we can fly to heights and distances that were previously unimaginable. So as we talk about cultural joy here at Menlo, creating an intentionally joyful culture, we think about some very specific things. We talk about starting with purpose, answering those questions. Who do we serve and what would delight look like for them? When we talk about those, we say we should focus beyond the normal stakeholders of an organization. We should look past our customers, our employees, and our shareholders. What kind of delight are we trying to create in the world with what we do? For us, the people we intend to delight are people who do not pay us for what we do and don't even know we exist. The end users of the software that we're designing and developing. We are a custom software design and development firm. People come to us to build large, complex software systems that will one day be used by people who didn't pay us for what we did. One day, those will be used by people who never knew we had a hand in designing and developing the software they're using every day in their work lives. But what we hear back from those people anecdotally usually is something that most software developers never hear. I love this software. This software made my life better. How did you do it? The purpose we start from is that externally focused purpose of ending human suffering in the world as it relates to technology, returning joy to something that should be joyful. We value leadership over hierarchical authority. That isn't to say bosses are bad and leaders are good, because we probably all had good and bad examples of both. But the point we try and make here is you don't have to wait for a title, a promotion, or a corner office, or a place on the org chart to lead. You can lead from anywhere. Leadership can occur at anywhere in the organization. Pursue systems thinking over bureaucratic thinking. Simple, repeatable, measurable, visible systems will win out over bureaucracy every single time. Provide an environment where there was caring in all directions, caring up to the top leadership of the organization, down to the front lines and across to our peers. There should be evidence of caring throughout the organization. Building an organization and a set of processes where we are learning together every minute of every day. One of the books that I was so intrigued by back in my trough of disillusionment days was a book by Peter Senge called The Fifth Discipline on the art and practice of building a learning organization. He talks a lot about systems thinking in that book. But I can tell you in our construct of pairing 2 people and switching the pairs every 5 days, there is learning going on constantly at Menlo without formal training classes. And then ultimately, storytelling. I hear this more and more in conferences that I go to and other keynote speakers, the importance of storytelling as it relates to leadership. Now, storytelling is an art as old as human history. We build it into the anthems of nations. We tell stories around campfires or totems. This is what has propelled tribes and communities and nations forward. Storytelling is what connects heart to mind, soul to spirit, concept to reality. Storytelling is what people remember because they remember how it made them feel. This is a fundamental act of leadership. We can tell stories about our past, both triumph and tragedy, and we can tell visionary stories of our future. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What will that future look like? Storytelling and leadership are inexorably intertwined. And a lot of people ask me about joy and they want to compare it to happiness. They ask me, are they the same? And I say, no, they're not the same, at least not in my vocabulary. Happiness is important too, but I don't believe it's possible to do the hard kinds of things that we do or you do and be happy every minute of every day without medication. Joy is a much longer arc. Joy is the result of doing good work together for a long period of time. Joy is that feeling you get when you cross the finish line after 26.2 miles of a marathon. I'm not sure too many people are happy when they cross that finish line, at least the way they're feeling. But there is that deep sense of satisfaction that came from all the training. Joy is the feeling a parent gets when watching their daughter marry the man of her dreams, and all the hard work of parenting is expressed in a simple "I do." I just had this experience on July 1st of this year when my middle daughter got married to the man of her dreams. I know that somebody here in the group talked about their son getting married. These are really important events in our lives, and they are the result of the hard work of parenting, where we are not happy every minute of every day, and we have really good kids. Joy is the feeling a fighter pilot gets when, after all the training and preparation, she lands the F-35 on the deck of the aircraft carrier in high winds, low visibility, and terrible weather conditions. And once she knows that the plane, the flight crew, the ship, she are all safe and sound, she can't wait to do it again. It is important for us to figure out, where do we get our joy from, and build that into our organizations and our purpose. A lot of people will ask me, where do you begin? Where does this journey to joy actually start? Because I can tell you, a lot of organizations, when I speak in front of them, I see them whispering to the person next to them. I've overheard what they've said from time to time. I wish so-and-so were here. I wish they could hear Rich's message. No, what I tell them is, no, you needed to be here. I needed to be here. The journey to joy starts inside. It started for me way back in 1997 when I was a newly minted VP. That's not me, and that's not my 8-year-old daughter, Sarah. But I took her to work with me that day because the Ann Arbor Public Schools, where I live, has this Take Your Child to Work Day, apparently ordered to inspire children to careers of their own. They're going to watch their parent work all day. Can you imagine a more boring day for an 8-year-old than to watch a newly minted VP work all day? I mean, what on earth is she going to see? Oh my gosh, my dad does email all day long, and then he takes meetings. And so she wisely brought her backpack full of coloring books, crayons, and stickers, and sat at my task table all day while I did the work of the VP while she supposedly watched. But I thought I better ask her at the end of the day, what did you think, Sarah? Oh my, out of the mouths of babes. She said, what I saw, Dad, here is you're really important. I said, what? What do you mean? She said, well, what I saw here is nobody can make a decision without asking you first. Oh man, guilty as charged. I had built a hero-based organization. I was the #1 hero. She was calling me out, even though she was very proud. I was instantly mortified. And I knew the only way to scale a hero-based organization is to scale the heroes. And the only way to scale heroes is overtime. And I'm looking across the table at this 8-year-old, realizing that I didn't want to miss the best parts of being a dad. So I had to change. I had to figure out how to become a different kind of leader. I had to figure out how to bring my team members up around me without me being central to everything. And I get it. A lot of people look at me now and they say, oh, Rich, we admire Menlo. We think it's a great organization, but you know, you're the CEO, you're the entrepreneur, you're the person who could set the tone. And there is absolutely a place for top visionary leaderships in organization, no question. President of the United States can call a nation to the moon and safely back. Start the Peace Corps from the steps of the Michigan Union just down the road from us. Those are important moments for visionary leaders. But the story I want to leave you with is a different kind of leadership that is available to all of us. Now, if you, like me, spend any time at the Detroit Metro Airport and the McNamara Terminal, you might recognize this McDonald's. And I will admit I have a weakness: quarter pounder with cheese, large fry, and a Coca-Cola, but only at this McDonald's. I'm a busy traveler. I'm often running a little bit late, and a quick meal inside of McDonald's is just the ticket for me before I get on my flight. And every time I was in this McDonald's, there was this guy named Mike. How did I know? Because that's what his McDonald's badge said, Mike. He was an older guy. And every time I was there, he was hustling around the restaurant, cleaning the crumbs and the wrappers off the table that we busy travelers carelessly left behind. But every time Mike got near me, he leaned in. He said, "How's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin?" And he brought that energy every single time I saw him. I was amazed. Thought they're so lucky to have Mike. And then one day I was there and Mike was off shift. And a kid's pulling a sled full of garbage out of the back of the restaurant on the way to the dumpster. And as he rolls it by my table, he leans in and he says, "How's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin?" I thought to myself, what on earth is going on at this McDonald's? This is one of the least relationless places, or the most relationless places on the planet, inside of one of the most relationless places in the world, right? I mean, inside of a McDonald's at an international airport. Come on. And they're doling out kindness and napkins. You got to be kidding me. So I pulled Derek, the manager, aside and I thanked him. I said, "I noticed." And he thanked me for seeing it. And he said, "Rich, anything we can do to compete with Plum Market all across the way, we're going to try." Well, here's the point of this story. Number one, I'm pretty sure Derek didn't go to McDonald's corporate and say, "Hey guys, could you form a committee to write a policy on doling out kindness and napkins?" No, he just did it. And the beautiful part is it was free. I never even asked for a napkin. And this is what's available to all of us. We can start right where we are. We can start changing the world around us. We don't have to change the world. We just have to change our world. No matter where you are in the organization, you can make the kind of changes they made here. And the way you can do it, run the experiment, try stuff, see if it works, and develop that attitude where we're more likely to take action than form a committee and a policy and take a meeting. One of our most famous experimental stories was with little Maggie. 15 years ago, Tracy had little Maggie, and she didn't know what to do when she was ready to come back from maternity leave because the grandparents lived too far away to help, and the daycare they planned to use was full. And yet she was excited to come back to work. Tracy was. And I had a screaming match in my brain that Tracy never heard, the kind that says, "Don't you dare do what you're about to do. HR will freak out. The lawyers will go through the roof. The insurance policies will rise." Bright voice said, "It's your company. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have an HR department." So I looked at Tracy after the screaming match was done in my brain. I said, "Bring her in." She says, "What do you mean bring her in?" I said, "Bring her into work." She said, "All day?" I said, "Sure." She said, "Every day?" And I said, "Why not?" And she looked around the room, the big open room, like the one behind me. She said, "Where will I put her?" Because this was not an offer to build a daycare. The baby's going to be with the parent all day long. And they, at that point, she did. She brought her in. And it changed the world. Now, that was 29 Menlo babies ago. I'm gonna run a brief experiment in the webinar here. Hold on one second. Hey, Ted and Angelina, could you have George bring Joel in if he's available? We'll see. So this picture here is of little Ellie, Menlo baby number 8. And what we learned is sometimes you should expect the unexpected. Here's Ellie learning to pair program. Remember, we work in pairs, the baby's with the parent. Here's Ellie going to high-tech anthropology design sessions. We learned we could pair the babies too, and we learned it worked for extroverts and introverts. I'll let you decide which is which here. And we learned our customers behave better when you bring babies to meetings. They don't yell at you. They don't raise their voice with you. They don't swear at you. And oh, by the way, here's Menlo baby number 29.
Hello, hello.
This is little Joel with dad. So it's not just an opportunity for moms to bring in the babies. George has brought in both of his kids so far. How old is Elsie now?
4.
Wow, 4 years old. And how old are you, Joel?
5 months old.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Just working on his coding skills. I'm giving him some feedback.
Awesome. Well, it's great to see you, Joel. Yeah, I saw Carol carrying Joel around earlier.
Yeah.
So the babies are raised by the village. So
I'll say
excellent.
bye.
All right. See you later. Thanks, George. So this has been an awesome addition to our culture, without a doubt. We had no idea if it would work right, if it would work the way we wanted to. And so again, for us, running the experiment is an important part of our culture. Now, again, part of my goal when I give these kind of talks is to do what I call not letting you off the hook. Because a lot of times what happens is people say, oh, Menlo's amazing. Oh, Rich is, this visionary leader, but we could never do it because we're too fill in the blank. We're too old, we're too new, we're too big, we're too small, we're too regulated, we're too unregulated, we're a venture capital backed firm. Whatever the answers are, everybody has an excuse why they can't do anything akin to what we do. The story I want to share with you, though, is about a 180-year-old life insurance company called Mass Mutual Corporation. Now, $30 billion a year in annual revenue. It's a life insurance company. It's 180 years old. I'm guessing most people I talk to do not work for companies that are 180 years old. But they heard the talk that I'm sharing with you today. They decided to run some serious experiments. They invited me back 6 months later to show me the experiments they were running. Nobody had ever done that before. Amy Ferrero, their VP of claims, walked me down the marbled corridors of Mass Mutual Corporation and said, Rich, we're going to go visit the claims department, this 100,000 square foot facility of half-height cubicles where they process $3 billion a year in claims every year. Can you feel the weight of the bureaucracy in what I described? She said, Rich, when we turn the corner, you're going to see helium balloons. I said, oh, cool. What are you celebrating? She said, nope. Everywhere there is a desk with a helium balloon taped to it, it is a declaration by the person at that desk, I'm running an experiment. Come talk to me about it. Fascinating. I never said anything about helium balloons. So I ran up to Susan's desk. I said, Susan, tell me about your experiment. She straightened right up, proudly said, well, I'm in charge of the quality process. I'm the last stop before the check goes out the door for the beneficiary. I have to do a 3-step quality check process, A, B, and C. The trouble is if I find a mistake at step C, I have to go back and redo step B. And it's the longest part of the process. So my experiment is to do A and then C and then B because the order doesn't matter. And she is just beaming with energy about this. It didn't sound like that complicated a change or an experiment, but she is very, very excited to share it with me. I said, Susan, how long have you worked here? And she straightened up again. She said, 19 years. I said, have you always had this kind of energy, Susan? And her face turned into a scowl. And she said, no, I hated my job before. I was counting the days to retirement. She says, I didn't even care about work anymore. I said, what's different now? She says, now we can run experiments. I said, what was it like before? She said, Rich, every idea I ever had to go up 5 levels, over, down 5 levels. Every idea I ever brought to work died on the vine. She said, after a while, you just stop bringing ideas to work. She says, after a while, you look for your joy elsewhere. She says, after a while, I was just counting the days to retirement, convinced this was just a job and I didn't really care about it. She says, now I love my job. Now I can't wait to get to work. I don't even think about retirement anymore. I'm looking across this room and there are balloons as far as the eye could see. Same people as 6 months ago, same capital equipment, same paychecks. Tremendous difference in human energy. Anybody who doesn't believe that company is operating at a higher level is confused about the effect of human energy on the morale and spirit and effectiveness of an organization. If Mass Mutual can do it, a 180-year-old life insurance company, there are many companies that would be hard-pressed to say we can't do it too. This is, believe me, not your great-great-grandfather's life insurance company anymore. So the final story I want to leave you with is about this picture. Every week with our customers, part of our processes, we bring our client in and have a weekly show and tell with them to demonstrate to them the work we accomplished on their project the previous 5 days. Michael called me up, the gentleman in the orange shirt, asked me if he could bring Buster to show and tell. I said, yeah, you can bring whoever you want. Who's Buster? He says, my Great Dane. I said, oh my. Now, we always have dogs. I could have the dogs that are in the office come in to the presentation. I won't do that for your timing benefit here, but we always have dogs in the office, but we never had a customer bring a dog in the office. Buster greeted me at the front door by putting his paws on my shoulders. I'm 6'5". Buster towered over me. He was a gentle giant of a dog. And the point of this story is the big point of everything I want to share with you today. Michael couldn't bring his dog into where he worked. It wouldn't have been appropriate. Nothing wrong with their attitude about dogs. But when Michael interacted with us, he wanted to be more like us. And that is the effect, that is the opportunity we have as leaders in the world, is once we start to change and we change in a positive way, people want to be more like us. They want to emulate us. They want what we're having. And that, I would declare, is a courageous, non-conforming journey to joy. Thank you very much for inviting in your world. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'd be happy to answer any you have. I hope to see many of you here when the tours are going on, or maybe I won't. I think I'm going to be in Grand Rapids while you're here, but you'll be well taken care of by my team. And this QR code has lots of resources that you can download and so on. I think there's copies of these slides, so you can follow up with us after the talk here. Thank you very much.
Great, Rich. Just as fantastic as last time I heard you on the LPPDE conference in Austin, 2015.
Wow, 8 years ago. That doesn't seem possible that Austin was 8 years ago.
Yep, time flies. But any questions? Just shout them out.
Richard, how often does your audience look at you in tears when you're finished?
You know,
Totally inspired.
Thank you for that question. It has happened many times. I remember the first time that I was aware of it. I gave a talk like this in Berlin, and I had male German engineers in tears coming up to me to talk to me about what we've done. And I thought to myself, oh my God, if I can get male German engineers to cry, it's probably going to happen. And also I remember it happening in Japan as well. You know, a lot of what I think about is the Deming quote that says, you know, all anyone asks for in their work lives is a chance to work with pride. And when you are given that chance and it actually works, or if you give them a picture of what that might look like, I think it touches our hearts in a way that no other kind of thought process can. But thank you for the question.
Actually, I did have one question, Richard. When you go to bring new people into Menlo, are you looking for specific characteristics in when you hire them, or how does that work? Or do you find talented people and convert them, or what's your mindset there?
Yeah, so and I've changed the way I describe this as I watch the results of our interview process. So probably no surprise, we do interviewing differently than I ever did it before. I used to describe my old interviewing process, you know, the way I did it in traditional management, because my career is just about split down the middle now between what everyone would recognize as normal in Menlo. And I used to say my old interviewing process was two people sitting across a table lying to each other for a couple of hours. And obviously I get a little bit cynical and sarcastic, but it's self-deprecating as well because it was me doing it. Now we have an interview process where we don't ask any questions. And what we do is we do a mass interview. We bring 20 or 30, we just had 20 people in to interview for a high-tech anthropology position. I think we're trying to hire 2 or 3. But we had 20 people show up all at the same time. They showed up about 4 p.m. We run them through 3 different exercises. We pair them during the interview with another candidate. And then we give them the weirdest instructions you'll ever hear in an interview. Your job is to help the person sitting next to you, who, by the way, is competing for the same position you are. Your job is to help them get a second interview. make your partner look good. Be the least important person in the conversation. We're going to do this 3 different times with 3 different pair partners, 3 different exercises. Menlonians are watching and taking notes about the behaviors we see. And here's the other weird thing. We tell them what failure looks like beforehand. We say, don't do this, do that. We actually want to weed them in, not weed them out. We want them to succeed. And people still fail. That's okay. We tell them if you failed, you can come back the next time. Out of those 20, we picked 8 to come back for a second interview. Those are happening right now. And the second interview is they come in and work for a day, and we pay them. And they work side by side with a Menlonian in the morning, side by side with a different one in the afternoon on the same task. Their job is to carry that task forward. And if that works, we bring them in for a paid 3-week trial. That works for most of our candidates, not all, and we'll adjust as necessary based on real life circumstances. But the point is, what I used to say is we were hiring for culture fit, and these were our culture fit tests. I realize now when I look at who we've actually gathered, there's no way that can be true. What I realize what we're actually doing is we are teaching simple, relatable expectations for people. And it's amazing when human beings have clear expectations, they can adjust their behaviors, because we have this very eclectic team. I mean, we have people who are willing to self-declare they're on the spectrum, all the way up to the most extroverted people you would ever meet, working side by side in the same room successfully together. We have far more introverts than extroverts. I think that's the only way an organization like ours could work. But it is an incredibly eclectic mix of people. And the other interesting thing, I'll just throw this in, the people sitting across the table from the pairs have no access to resumes. They are literally deciding what they're seeing based on the human being, not the resume.
Wonderful.
I see a lot of hands up, but I will let others. Jeff, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it's great examples of knowledge exchange. So let's go on with Jeff.
Thank you, Richard. That's great. That's a great talk. I saw you in Austin as well, and I read you at Joy Inc., and I've really tried to use several pieces of it. I really think it's inspiring. But I'm still in an organization where I can really only influence a certain area. The people that I work with or work next to. What's your advice for sort of the outside of my influence sphere with the things coming in, and I want to keep and build joy in my sphere, but I have this outside of my sphere.
Yeah, and and honestly, of course, I will simply say it this way, and so do we. But for us, because the outside part of Menlo is the customers who are walking in all the time, we have to deal with every kind of customer that comes in. We have regular customers who have demands, they have needs, they have expectations, all that kind of stuff. That's going to be true whether you're inside of an organization. Remember, the first time I did this was inside of that tired old public company, and I just changed my team, the technical team. What happened, though, was because now my technical team was interacting with the rest of the company in a far different way, then all of a sudden the rest of the company started asking me, hey, can you teach me how to do this with my group? Because they wanted what we were having. They saw the actual dramatic change in the spirit and the energy and attitude of my team, and they wanted to be more like us. Now, I think in large organizations, one of the ways this works most effectively, and you can tell me whether it would work in your organization, is eventually something happens that actually starts to change minds, because then there's somebody in another department that says, hey, boss, I'm applying for a transfer to Jeff's group. And that boss says, well, what do you mean you're applying for a transfer to Jeff's group? And then he runs down to your office and says, hey, Jeff, why are you poaching my people? And you're like, I'm not poaching your people. I don't know. I didn't ask them to apply. I'm not even sure I have a position. Well, why do they want to work for you? And now you can invite them in. Because I think one of the most effective ways we share our culture with the world is what you're going to experience when you come visit us. It's one thing to read a book. It's another one to have a talk. I can plant pictures in your head, but you might actually in your head say, oh, you know, he's the author. He's the co-founder. He's selling Menlo. Of course, he's going to be energized and excited and enthusiastic and proud of what he created. But let's go see it. Let's go talk to the people who work there. Let's see if it's as real as Rich says it is. And you'll have a chance to do that yourselves. I won't even be here. You'll get a chance to walk through the company, ask people directly, like George with the baby. Is it really like Rich says? Do you really bring the baby in every day? And George, oh, yeah, that's true. But when that starts to happen, when people come to visit you, they might start pulling you aside and say, hey, Jeff, where'd you get these ideas? What's working for you? What have you tried that didn't work? And suddenly you start to find out that everybody actually wants what you want. We all want the same things in our work lives.
Great, thank you.
Great. And we have a hand from Thomas Warnick.
Hey, Thomas.
Hi, thanks for giving the talk. It's really great. Nice hearing you. Kind of piggybacking on Geoff's question. You know, if you're in middle management and you're kind of subject to the constraints of the organization, you know, do you have any tips for getting your own group energized? And I fully believe what you're saying about, you know, other groups are gonna want to latch on to that once you get that energy going. Thanks.
You bet. You know, I'll go back to a story at Old Interface Systems because I think it was an important lesson for me. I ended up with some very specific ideas of what I wanted to do with my technical team. And I was going to need some outside help to do some of the things I wanted to do, including bringing in that consultant, James Goebel, who ultimately became my co-founder at Menlo. And it was going to be expensive. And I went to my boss, Bob Nero, and said, hey, Bob, this is what I'm thinking of. This is what I'm going to try. And he'd say, well, how much is it going to cost, Rich? I said, Bob, the cost is immaterial. The effect of what I'm going to do is going to be so dramatic. We're going to be so much happening. He's like, Rich, you're scaring me. How much is this going to cost? And I told him, and he threw me out of his office because it was way more than he was willing to spend on the change I was imagining. And I tried that 2 or 3 times. I kept climbing that mountain, using my technical jargon, using my perspective on things. And then one day I came into Bob's office and I changed my conversation with him because I realized I wasn't speaking to his concerns and I wasn't using his language. And I went to Bob and I said, hey, Bob, because I believe, Thomas, that selling up into the organization is, you know, at least 50% of the battle. Selling down into your team is the other 50%. And depending on where everybody's at, it could be different percentages for everybody. But these are both equally important efforts, right? And so I went to Bob one day and I said, hey, Bob, you are counting on me to deliver new technical software products to the market to allow the company to grow the way you plan to grow. He said, that's right. I said, Bob, I've been sitting in on the executive team meetings and I can tell you, I know based on how much cash we have in the bank, what our runway is, what our current revenue is, we are going to run out of money before I get the products done and we're going to go out of business. And he said, Rich, that is an appropriate assessment. That's exactly where we're at. I said, Bob, as far as I can tell, there's only 3 routes out when a public company is faced with this. Number 1, acquisition. Number 2, secondary offering in the public markets. Number 3, private equity placement. He said, yep, those are our 3 options, Rich. I said, we're going to need an infusion of cash, Bob. He goes, I know that, Rich. He says, that's my job. I said, I get it. But I said, Bob, any one of those transactions, they're going to send a due diligence team to Interface Systems. They're going to walk through the front door into my end of the building, and they're going to look at my people, my process, and my products. And they're going to decide whether to place that money in us based on the 3 things they see in my team. And I can tell you right now, Bob, in the current state, we are not going to pass muster. That's why we need to do this initiative. And at that point, Bob literally signed off on it that afternoon. 6 months later, we were acquired by Tumbleweed Communications for 10 times the stock price as the day that I had that conversation with Bob. It turned out exactly as I predicted. The point of the story, though, is I had to learn to speak Bob's language. I couldn't come at this from my technical and technologist perspective. I had to look at the needs of the business and say, why am I doing this? Why is this important to what Bob's trying to accomplish as the CEO of a public company?
Very good.
Yeah,
Go
thank
over
you.
You
to
bet.
I know,
Mia.
Peter. Peter, you're trying to just wrap up, but I had one other question. Richard, thanks for the presentation. You talked about the building that culture of joyful leadership, and there's a number of things there. I was curious, based on your experience, both internal and external, which is the one that was hardest for your team to overcome, or which one do you think is the most challenging in the industry?
I think the
Purpose,
hardest
value leaders, et cetera,
Yeah,
systems thinking, et cetera.
I think the hardest one is the leadership over hierarchical authority, because it goes directly to the reward systems that typically confound any change. Too many people who are not in a hierarchically oriented leadership position are waiting for others to lead. They're waiting for the boss to make a decision. They're waiting for, it's the us versus the, well, I don't know why they make us work like this. And like, what do you mean? Why? It's all of us. We could work on this together, And so I think that attitude is what is the hardest to change, because it messes with existing reward systems. And I'm not even talking about compensation, I'm talking about where's your office? What's your title? What are you trying to protect?
It probably doesn't take too many bosses cutting down their employees to change that culture. So
Yep.
probably a 10-to-1 ratio. One or two of those, and you've really just beat up something you've changed for 6 months.
Well, and how often do bosses, say, do as I say, but not as I do?
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Thank you.
I think the idea is to come back to some questions to both Dantar and Rich after Dantar's presentation, but let's let Mia make the last question right now.
Last question. Yeah, thanks. This was really inspiring presentation, as others have said as well, and I actually happen to have a purpose workshop tomorrow morning at 8:30. Nice. So perfect awesome. Timing. I have maybe a little bit specific question, in the sense that, of course, this is a change that doesn't happen overnight, and there are different phases when you are starting to do this within your own team or within the own environment that you are directly able to influence, and then you come to the point where they are starting to kind of see the light, but then they're also starting to see that the others around them don't see the light yet, and then there is this kind of time when you have this enthusiasm and frustration at the same time. So any good stories or experiences or tips around that, how to overcome that?
Yeah, and that's why I was so focused on changing my behaviors first, because I had created that hero-based organization interface systems, and everybody, literally, my daughter was right. They would line up outside my door, one after another. Hey, Rich, what should we do about this? What should we do about that? And of course, what am I actually doing when I set up an organization like that? Is I'm telling them it's okay to leave your brains on your desk or on your pillow at home. Don't need to bring them to work. I've got all the big answers. That's why I get the big paycheck and the big stock options and all that kind of stuff. And when I started letting go of that, and it was pretty quickly, it was amazing how others rose in my absence, because I had hired smart people, right? I just didn't let them be smart. And so I remember one day, shortly after that moment of deep introspection delivered by my 8-year-old, was one of my guys, Dave, was walking down the hall, and he waved at me across the way, and he said, "Hey, Rich, had a crisis today. All taken care of. If you want to catch up on it, let me know. I'll fill you in on what happened." And I remember thinking to myself, what? I mean, I didn't know about it, and you didn't come ask me? And at that moment, I realized a new day had dawned, and that I had extricated myself from being central to every decision that was being made. And that was a magical moment for me. I'm sure it would take another hour of talking through what were the microscopic steps along the way that got us to that. But I would say that should be one of the goals along the way.
Great. Thank you again, Rich. Great talk.
Thank you.